Okay, I'd like to call this regular scheduled meeting of March 10th to order. At this time, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will have 10 seconds of silence. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please stand for 10 seconds. You may be seated. Deanne, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Flagg,
Here.
Commissioner Hanna,
Here.
Commissioner McCall, Mayor Kennedy.
Here. Our first agenda item is the Pinellas County Sheriff, and he will come forward and he's going to give our report for the month of February.
How you doing?
Hi.
The report for February, I did not receive it, but I did some research.
Okay.
Just to let you know, what I found was there was less thefts. There was a couple thefts, 2 thefts and a grand theft, all of which were solved, one with an arrest. And the other 2, nobody wanted to prosecute on those. Other than that, I didn't find anything that stood out to me that is any concern.
Is there any member of the commission who would like to address any concerns that they have for the sheriff at this time? Anything? Just so the audience knows that 15 minutes before our scheduled meetings, our commission meetings, the sheriff is here, and if you would like to talk to them privately, you may do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to have 1B, the report of our Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue Fire Commissioner, David Ardman. Hi, David.
Good evening. Congratulations to the 3 commissioners that were just sworn into their next term of office. Congratulations and good evening. Report from the district, short-term vacation rental. We're still awaiting the end of the legislative session to see what changes may be required regarding that, but we're following it closely, as I'm sure you are. Longer range plans. We've completed the first step of a more detailed station location study for all 3 of our stations in cooperation with Pinellas County and a third-party consultant. We'll keep you posted on that. We have a follow-up meeting this week with Pinellas County staff and the consultant, so we'll have more perhaps on that next month. Water rescue. We're still awaiting approval from Pinellas County Water and Navigation and a letter from the Army Corps to get a permit to place the boat lift at the IRB docks. All the IRB permits are approved, and we thank you for that. Coronavirus. We spent the last couple of weeks addressing concerns over COVID-19 implications on service delivery in our workforce, so we're staying on top of that as best we can. Going to call data quickly, we've had 46 EMS calls for service, 5 motor vehicle crashes, 10 falls, 10 difficulty breathing and cardiac related, 21 others, which could be anything from the seizure to an animal bite. Average response time for EMS this past month was 4 minutes and 11 seconds. We had 15 fire-related calls, 8 fire alarm, 1 structure fire, 2 elevator rescues, and 4 citizen assists. And our average response time for fire-related calls was 5 minutes and 2 seconds. So we hit the target on 100% of our fire calls.
Very good.
And lastly, City Commissioner Mims and I had a communication this morning over a Tampa Bay Times article that appeared this morning. Seems a revision to the Florida fireworks law is moving quickly. The Senate on Monday passed a bill that would permit the use of fireworks 3 nights a year, which would be New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and July 4th, of course. So city manager and the city attorney are going to be looking at that closely, and will be available to help and participate as much as possible.
for as much as needed.
And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Okay, this time we're going to open up the public comments. There is a 3-minute time limit per person. Any member of the audience may come forward, give their name and address, and state any comment or concern that they may have over any matter which the City Commission has control, excluding agenda items. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Thank you, Don.
Hey, I'm Don House, 21 and 4 Beach Trail. So I came here last meeting with the question as to the qualifications of the City Commission. And it was, Ed was the only one that addressed it in his things. And the city attorney would have won first place against Jonathan Bolter in the dancing he gave on that answer. But he did respond to me later on with some very detailed stuff, of which I came up with about 15 pages. Obviously not going to spend that time tonight, but there are a couple of points here, and one thing that I wholeheartedly agree with Randy on is that the City Commission is totally in control of the City Commission. They are responsible for their the validity of the members, not the city manager, not the city attorney, not the city clerk. It's y'all guys. And I had filed a complaint before. It was probably premature, but I think it might be something that needs to be addressed a little further right now as to what did happen. It's not over just because Joe got sworn in as a new commissioner. This is something that went from at least January, maybe December, but at least January and February. And I think it's extremely important that the City Commission looks at this and that answers it wholeheartedly. So I've got my 15 pages. I'll email it to y'all. I'll do what you like. Thanks.
Thank you, Don.
My name is Russell Meadows, and I reside in Seminole. And I am a USA Pickleball Association member and a pending ambassador in this area. There are several hundred pickleball players using our beautiful courts right here in Indian Rocks Beach. God bless each one of you for providing such a wonderful facility to play our sport. The courts generate a substantial amount of local revenue. Players lodge, rent, lease, shop, eat, attend events, even own and purchase property. Pickleball is the country's fastest growing sport. There are over 12 major health benefits from playing the sport. The sociability and fun with friends are unequaled. Our courts have earned the reputation of being the most friendly, fun-loving, helpful, and hospitable anywhere around. The park and surrounding area are a beehive of activity and noise early each morning. People going to work, to school, jogging, walking dogs, strolling, talking with friends, biking, rollerblading, skateboarding, playing tennis, basketball, frisbee, edging the lawns, mowing the lawns, leaf blowing, chainsawing, trimming, trucks are delivering, and construction going on, and garbage trucks are picking up the trash. Please keep our present court times. This is a park, not a cemetery. Please come and play pickleball with us and find a new lease on life. We think of this as a little bit of heaven on earth. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do have a petition with over 100 people on it.
Laura Cliff. Is there anyone else who would like to come up at this time for public comment?
Tom.
Hi, Tom.
My name's Tom Chittenden. I live at 510 Garland Circle. I purchased the property there in 1993, 27 years ago. And that's a result of originally my family moving to Florida from Iowa in 1957, and we lived in Indian Rocks Beach, the old Potter places on the beach, like Haven Cove. 27 years is a long time. I've got 9 grandkids. The oldest is 26. Every one of those grandkids have used the parks here, have used the boat launch because we have a jet ski. We've used the basketball courts, the tennis courts. I played softball. One of my grandsons played Little League. We've come to this park out here at Cole for years and years and years. Every one of my 9 grandkids have enjoyed it very much. I'm at the age now where I can't play tennis anymore. I don't play softball because I get hurt. You know, I don't play basketball. The kids come out and use the skateboard park and they buy the little, or they get the little tags for their helmets and everything else. I play pickleball. And I've done it for about 5 years now. And to be honest with you, I want to say thank you so much for putting those courts there. That's absolutely wonderful. It gives me an opportunity for about an hour's worth of exercise 3 times a week. That said, I get up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning every morning. And I'm ready to go at 6, 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I know a lot of people sleep later than that, so I'm patient and I wait. But I'm looking at, and I don't know if you've seen the Pinellas County Parks and Recreation brochure. If any of you haven't seen it, I'll be more than happy to leave it. There are 29 parks in Pinellas County, all of which open at 7 a.m. And I see no reason or exception why we shouldn't open at 7 a.m. It allows me an opportunity to get out, get my exercise, do the things I need to do during the day, and go from there. So I advocate 7 a.m. opening for the pickleball courts, and frankly, I advocate taking the tennis courts and making 4 new pickleball courts out of there and putting 2 new tennis courts over here to the right. So that's my opinion. I think it's absolutely wonderful, and I want to thank Russ for all he's done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Robel, 112 13th Avenue. I wasn't going to talk about pickleball, but it seems to be the topic of the night. The one thing that I don't understand is when the skateboard park opened some 15, 17 years ago, it was to be not open till 10 o'clock because it created too much noise. So if the pickleball and everything else is going to be open early, why don't you let them in to the skate park? I mean, open up everything. You know, I think that's prejudiced against the young kids and all that. I can hear the pickleball court from 13th. I can hear the skateboard park from 13th. I can hear everything. So it doesn't bother me if they're going to be skating at 7:30, if they're going to be playing pickleball at 7:30. Congratulations to Joe. Happy birthday. I'm here because I'd like to talk about the Forward Pinellas deal that I did vote on. I approved it, $50,000. I wish I would have listened to Kelly and John, who were telling me exactly what was probably going to happen. I didn't believe it, but it did happen. They came in town for $50,000, told us that we have a parking problem. I mean, who here in the audience did not know we had a parking problem? I mean, it's just unbelievable. They didn't give us any solutions. I thought they were going to come to town and give us solutions. They didn't. They came to town and told us, yeah, you can get a grocery store, but you know, you'll be up against Publix and this much money spent here. You can raise the height limits and get bigger buildings and do mixed use. You can do this, but there's a parking problem everywhere. You have to address your parking problem. That, I mean, for $10 I could have told you that from living here all the time I've lived here. So I think, I apologize for voting yes on it. I think it was a big mistake going forward with $50,000. It could have been used in better places like no parking signs for one side of every side street or something like that. That's going to cause more parking problems, but I know we're talking about that later on tonight. So that to me was a big problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward at this time?
No, go ahead. I doubt it. We're on.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Gell, and I am representing Alan Hopley. I'm a local attorney. Mr. Hopley lives at 531 Harbor
Sorry,
Road.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
is this about the variance application tonight?
Uh-huh.
You'll have a full opportunity to speak just in the same manner as at the Board of Adjustment when that matter comes up.
Oh,
This is
okay.
just for comment on things that are not on the
I
agenda.
didn't see it on the
Yeah.
agenda. My apologies.
No problems. Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
There you go.
Hey, Rod Baker, 364 Bahia Vista. Congratulations, Jeff.
Thank you.
This is just a small issue I want to bring to the city's attention. There's ordinances that have come to my attention that I believe might be a bit of an overreach and hitting law that is usurped by the state of Florida, my understanding, regarding hunting and fishing. And so it's a little thing, but it's really at the fabric of our constitutional rights. Florida sees fishing and hunting as part of our cultural heritage protected by the Constitution. And so it says that local ordinances pertaining to hunting and fishing shall not be passed. And we have ordinances prohibiting shark fishing from the beach. And I don't know if there's any science behind that, but it's interesting. Did you know that the FWC has just stated if you can legally shark fish from the beach, you have to go through a special course, part of which is to learn how to get along with other bathers and other legal uses of that beach. And so I think that that one runs afoul of the constitutional protections of fishing. And then there's another one that says that surf fishing is prohibited in close proximity to swimmers. And I'm not sure if the city wants to pick which legal use of the beach they want to make have a higher priority than others, especially one that's constitutionally protected as part of our cultural heritage. And then thirdly, spearfishing. This one doesn't really run afoul of the Constitution. It's almost with it. You can't spearfish within 1,000 feet. That's probably superfluous because there's already state law that you can't spearfish within 900 feet of a public beach. And so I wanted to provide you guys a copy of that, get it on the radar. Maybe Mr. Moore can give us an opinion. And if this is something that's governed by the state of Florida, usurped as part of our cultural heritage, perhaps the city would consider removing these ordinances.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this time? Hi, John.
Hello, John Fansfield, 448 Harbor Drive South. Joe, congratulations. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I wanted to bring something up. At the January meeting, Bonnie Sullivan told all the commissioners that Nick had moved, and she was very clear about what was going on in the neighborhood. All the commissioners know that if Nick had moved, then he could no longer be a commissioner. Nobody even blinked. Nobody said anything. And at the February meeting, Don House stated that Nick swore under oath that the Largo home was now his primary residence. That was in December. Again, nobody even bothered to ask Nick if it was true. And this is so simple. Either Nick was a resident or he wasn't a resident. If he was a resident, then he lied under oath. And that's breaking the state law, and you all swore to uphold the state laws when you took your oath of office. If Nick did live here, we have a problem. If Nick didn't live here, then we have a problem because he shouldn't be allowed to be a commissioner. You all know that in the statute. So it's your job to find out what is true. You need to ask everybody under oath what they knew about Nick moving and when. That's the only way to handle this. I know you can stonewall it, sweep it under the carpet, but that's the ethical thing to do, and I hope you do. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward at this time? One more time, okay. Rebecca.
Rebecca Safer, 368 La Hacienda Drive. And congratulations to all the commissioners that were sworn in tonight. I'm just going to say a couple words. Everything has been said, I think, already about pickleball. We started playing pickleball when we only had the tennis courts, and we went out there with chalk and a ruler or measuring tape every day and measured out the area so that we could play. And just want to thank the commission and the city manager and the other people that made it possible to have these pickleball courts for us, and we really do appreciate it. And if I could, maybe, I'm not sure if this is going to be okay to do or not, I'd like everybody who plays pickleball and is here to represent that. Just stand up.
You have to, Rebecca,
I'm sorry.
you have to address the commission.
Oh, sorry. I'd like to ask everybody if they could stand up who's here to support the idea of the pickleball courts being open when they are.
Nobody's standing up.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. I just wanted to show that we have quite a bit of support here because some of these people are really good. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak during public comment tonight? Okay, I'm going to close the public comment, and we're going to move on to agenda item number 3A, report of the city attorney. Randy, do you have a report?
I do, Madam Mayor. Touching on a few things. First, as it relates to the gentleman who brought up the issue of shark fishing and spear fishing and fishing from the shoreline, it's my understanding that though the city does have that ordinance on the books, it does not enforced it at any time recently. Nobody's been cited for that, to my knowledge. However, we are aware of the statutory preemption to that, and to clarify the matter, the city manager and I have already begun the process of coordinating an ordinance to strike that from the code. It's not uncommon, as we've talked about home rule issues and the like, for things to pass and things to linger in codes. That constitutional authority was ultimately vague enough that the legislature saw fit to codify that in FWC's requirements. So that is accurate in that regard. As it relates to the legislative session is supposed to be ending this week. There have been whispers and reports of extending it slightly for various reasons. As it relates to the short-term rental bill, I think that the legislature had a lot of momentum going forward and passing the proposed legislation. I'm sure all of you heard the governor made his, passing comments suggesting, hey, I really do think this is something that local communities should probably be in charge of. That really slowed that process. At present, the House version of the bill is temporarily postponed, and the Senate version of the bill is languishing in a committee, also temporarily postponed. Given where we are in session, it seems highly unlikely anything will pass in that regard. Anything's possible in the legislature, but again, as probability goes, it's unlikely at this point that that'll get passed. We continue to monitor there is a number of other legislative preemption and unfunded mandates going through between impact fees and other issues, and we'll continue to summarize those through the memoranda and of course do an end of session write-up for your review and knowledge. The mayor has asked that I address the matter of Commissioner Palumba and his tenure. The issue was raised through a series of written submissions to the City Commission. I would take pause at the idea that it was swept under the rug. I gave a fairly thorough analysis to the Commission for their consideration. And the allegation being that the Commissioner had moved simply based solely and exclusively on the homestead election. There's nothing in our ordinances, state law, or case law that says the homestead declaration for a coming year is itself a definitive marker of that. To the extent my comments at the last meeting were interpreted as an incredibly beautiful dance, and I thank you for that. I try to be as beautiful as possible in all things. But to the extent my comments were interpreted as evasive, it was to say that the idea that any issue in the law is clear-cut and straightforward is a misrepresentation of the nuance that need be approached in any given issue. In this particular issue, There were a number of factors to be considered. Most important is that of the fact that the commissioner was still registered to vote in Indian Rocks Beach, maintained a driver's license in Indian Rocks Beach, slept in Indian Rocks Beach on occasion, received packages in Indian Rocks Beach, hosted in Indian Rocks Beach. It is a multifaceted analysis. The case law on this issue, and there is case law on the issue, says that a great degree of deference must be given to the declaration of the elected official. In this case, that elected official declared that there was fully their intention to remain a resident of Indian Rocks Beach for their term and provided those indicia that I've spoken to. I've told you all of this. This is not news to you at this point. And I've provided the case law and code provisions analyzing precisely that fact. And so that is that element of it. I will say that we in this community, in smaller communities generally, it is always difficult enough to find people who are willing to put their names and faces in the public and the exposure, and Joe, congrats as I enter the speech, who are willing to volunteer their time, I commend, or serve in this capacity for that matter. And in communities like these where we have a lot of transient residents, and for those of you who are here seasonally, thank you for, while you're here, being engaged citizens and being a part of the community. And so the fact that a resident might own multiple properties is not itself dispositive. I understand the importance and value placed on a homestead. I also understand the restrictions placed on when you can declare for a homestead for a calendar year, a fiscal year, and that factors into the analysis. But Mayor, I think that sufficiently addresses it, gives it more analysis than may be necessary at this point, except to say that ultimately the parties, if there are parties here at all, there is general agreement that through the charter, this body determines whether or not an individual is qualified to serve, and this body shall file a charge if it deems otherwise. This body has been presented with this information thus far. It has not taken action, and it need not affirmatively vote not to take action. The inaction itself is sufficient. Beyond that, I would also like to say thank you for your feedback. As your city attorney, I'm now entering my, this year will make 10 years of practice in the law for me, 7 years here in Florida. And it is a pleasure in this past year to have been certified in city, county, local government law. This is my passion. This is not a side project I do, or I don't do wills on the side or do DUIs. This is, I live and breathe this, and I do appreciate and value the opportunity to serve this community. I thank you for your feedback. My firm thanks you for that. And with that, I have nothing else to add. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone on the commission have any questions for Randy, the city attorney, at this time? All right, then we are going to move to our city attorney. Would you like to give a report tonight?
I'm good, thank you. City manager?
Let's say so far I've been
Why did I
called.
say city attorney?
Use the city
Oh,
attorney.
sorry about that.
Wearing all the hats tonight,
So far it's called city attorney, city commissioner, and whatever.
He's a city manager.
Last month, for the benefit of the homeowners, I didn't have a report, so we're gonna make up for it tonight. So I want to give you an update on the projects and just different things that are going on in the city. The reconstruction of Behind Vista is complete. It's all new curbs, base, and pavement. We're just going through the traditional punch list kind of things to wrap that up. The gazebo project over in Cole Park, fortunately, Dean used his great wisdom again and found a bid package that Pinellas County already accepted, and we can piggyback on a bid that they have, so that's going to expedite that process. So we're in the final stages of finalizing all the paperwork, and we'll get that underway. That's a joint project with the city, and it was funded by A2K. The solar project, all the lights, remaining lights in City Hall have been converted to LEDs, and Dean's in the process of working with me on a bid package that will go out for the solar panels for this building, restroom in Cole Park, restroom at the Nature Preserve, and the museum. So we're close to having a bid package that will go out of that. The undergrounding project is going well. There's still confusion about what's the undergrounding project and what's the FDOT project. We're through with all our pipes and that kind of thing. Now the contractors and subcontractors for Duke and the other utilities are pulling cables and doing those kind of things. We're still on track of having that project complete by the end of August, 1st of September. So that means all the power lines will be gone. We'll have the light poles up and you'll see a difference in the roads. That's going well. East Couple of our property, that's a property that's owned by the city. We set aside some money in the budget to put in a fence on the west side of that property. We'll put a decorative fence on the front. And we're going to go ahead and remove a good number of the invasive trees that are on that property. We've had requests for years to do some work in there. So we're going to secure it and take some invasive trees out. So we'll go to do that. Beach access, as we continue to install solar bollard lights, taking out all the electrical lights, the updated sign and removing all the old signage. And then you'll notice if you go to 27th and 24th, we're almost complete with those two. We're going beach access by beach access, and we're pulling out shrubs and we're putting in shell. We're doing a lot of decorative things, and hopefully they'll look better and there'll be less maintenance for our staff. So we continue to work on that. A couple months ago, the commission approved for the city attorney and I to negotiate an agreement with Pinellas County on building services. I'm happy to tell you, I've already in a previous email that sent this to you, that we were successful in negotiating an agreement, and effective March the 30th, Pinellas County Building Department will be the lead building department for the city. Just for the clarity of the commission and the public, we will still be involved in the review and sign off of anything to do with the land code. So if it's going to be a building addition or a new house, Eddie primarily will still review for building heights and setbacks and all those kind of things. So March the 30th, which is on a Monday, is the start date for that. Coronavirus, the EMA now started a weekly phone call with all the cities. So I'm involved in those, just getting updates. There's really nothing in our area to report. We put a link on the website to the CDC, and we've all heard a good bit about this already. A lot of this is common sense. We had a conference call yesterday with the county administrator and the Board of Health and all the city managers about upcoming special events. And at this time, there's not any recommendations to alter anything that we have coming up, but that's just kind of a week by week thing. But with the events that we have, our joint event, for example, with homeowners with Beach Fest, there's a big difference in an outside event and an inside event. But that's all, to be frank with you, kind of a moving target. But if we were to need to cancel something, we'll give plenty of public notice and we'll put that out. We don't see that right now. Next week, the city's going to host a beach renourishment public forum. Representatives from the county will be here from 6 to 8 p.m. along with representatives of the Corps of Engineers to go over the request. And I know a number of property owners on the beach have received letters asking for them to sign easements so that the county can get ready for the next round of beach renourishment. That is a county meeting, county staff, Corps of Engineers staff that we're hosting. It's not a city meeting. It's a question and answer session. It's not a come make a public speech at a meeting. It's a forum to address questions that people that live on the beach that got these letters can maybe clear up with the county and the Corps of Engineers. So that's next week. One thing I did want to clear up is that one of my friends made a comment earlier that when we were talking about the Fort Pinellas study, that does come back to the commission in May. There's, I think, through the end of this week, and there's a link on our website that if anybody else has any comments or suggestions about that study, to send it to the Pinellas County, because it's still a draft. But one thing I do want to clear up, there's no recommendation at all in that draft study to increase the building height. So if that's been put out there that there's anything in that study that has to do with anything to do with amending the land code, that's not the case. One item that I will mention now, and then when we get to add to lead, I'll bring it up again, is that I would like to add to the agenda the discussion and hopefully get the commission to reach a consensus concerning the City of Bel Air's request of Pinellas County to investigate the feasibility of a toll for the Bel Air Beach Causeway Bridge. And obviously, as your manager, I'm not going to recommend that you voluntarily go along with Bel Air Beach petitioning the county to put a toll up because it affects all our residents, it affects people that work here. And it just, to be honest with you, it didn't make any sense to me. That bridge is a $72 million bridge that was paid for by tax dollars. And there's absolutely no reason to put a toll, but before this goes any further, I'd ask for that to be added as an agenda item so y'all can consider whether you authorize Randy Moore and I to draft a letter that Cookie can sign on behalf of the commission that says that the city of Indian Rocks Beach officially objects to a toll on the Bel Air Causeway Bridge. And that's all I have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Two things, Greg. Would you want to put that before the consent agenda, or would you want to put it at the end?
Let's do it at the end.
At the end, okay. And also, just to verify the cost of the visioning sessions and who paid for that.
It's around $50,000. A2K did donate, and for the life of me, sitting here now, it's several $1,000s that they donated to offset some of that cost. But it was around 50 plus the donation of A2K.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions at this time for the city manager? Okay. We know that now we're going to have each of the commissioners. Mr. Hanna, do you have any comments tonight?
First of all, I want to wish the birthday boy a happy birthday and welcome to the team. The only comment I have, I usually bring this up, it's about golf carts. And the main concern, it's all over the board as far as the age you can be, what you can do. We're starting to see a lot of golf carts, and in some of our short-term rentals, as an attraction, they're adding a golf cart. Right? Business-wise, that makes sense. Could I only put out to, not only to those people, but to folks who do own short-term rentals, if you'd be so kind as to let your guests understand that we have rules and regulations here, as far as speed and being careful and so forth. I think this is common sense, and I think it would probably help. But these folks coming in and renting these places for a week or so, they have no idea what our rules and regulations are, noise issues and things. And it'd be kind of a nice reach across the aisle kind of a thing, if you would, to be sure that your guests are aware of what a lot of our guidance and ordinances are in a nice way. That's all I have.
Mayor, if I may interrupt briefly,
Yes.
I just want to let the commission know that my office is in the course right now of preparing a memorandum, specifically analyzing that. There has been some confusion and talk about, this is the restriction, but the statute says that. I can tell you candidly, the statute says a lot of things in a lot of different places. The discussion is really also needs to be had about not what looks like a golf cart, but what actually is a golf cart versus what's a low-speed vehicle, and those distinctions. So we're working through that, and we'll be providing a legal analysis on those issues soon for your review.
Thanks, Randy.
Commissioner Joe, would you like to have your first comments as a commissioner on our city commission tonight?
Happy birthday to me, obviously. Actually, just want to thank everybody for your support. Obviously, look forward to enjoying being here on the commission and with this group, and continuing my support of this community. If you have any questions or see me on the street, feel free to step up and ask me any questions or give me your thoughts. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Flagg?
I also wanted to welcome Joe to the commission. Thank you very much for your volunteerism and being part of it. And I wanted to thank tonight all the people here that came to talk about their passion, which is pickleball, and the park hours, and also thank the city because they have done a lot to help mitigate any noise issues that have been on the courts. And I think it has helped. They've spent a good amount of money putting up some noise barriers to help the situation. Tonight's comments will help a lot. We're having a meeting in the following month to talk about park hours. So all of those comments and all of the people that are truly interested in keeping those hours, we will make note of that and we can address it at the next meeting. So thank you all. Those of you that are residents and want to stay for the work session, which is parking, that would be great. But you know, if it's just a pickleball thing and you want to excuse yourselves, is that okay, Mayor? They can do that at this time? Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We always have a calendar of the dates for the month, so in case you wanted to go to, for instance, on March 12th, we have our homeowner social hour. That will be at Chicago Jack's. It's a Thursday night from 6 to 7:30. The A2K Saturday day where they work in the community. Saturday, March 14th, they will be working at the county park from 8 to 11. We have the primary election will be March 17th, Tuesday. The polls will open at 7. They will close at 7 p.m. We have, as Greg said, we have the public forum for beach easements, which is March 16th. That's a Wednesday. We have a Great American Cleanup. If you're interested in helping on the beach, that's Saturday, March 21st from 9 to 11 at the county park. We have our Big C meeting. If you don't know what that is, that's all of the communities on the beach together once a month. They have breakfast, and it's always the last Wednesday, so that's March 25th at 7 a.m., and that is at Reddington Beach. You have breakfast. Saturday, March 28th, the Rotary will have their awesome pancake breakfast at 7 a.m. at Calvary Church. And then March 28th is also from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. in Church of the Isles is our Grain Fest, which that's become a very successful event if you want to stop in for that. April 4th, we have Saturday, which is the Rotary Run on the beach. That's at 7 a.m. April 4th, we also have a citywide garage sale. We have them twice a year, and the one in April is Saturday the 4th. I have Monday with the mayor, April 6th. I have it once a month. It's from 4 to 6:30. It's here in the auditorium if you'd like to come. Again, that's April 6th. And the next homeowner social will be April 9th, and that will be from 6 to 7:30 at the Red Lion. And then the rest, I'll tell you next month when we come. I appreciate you all being here tonight, and in the sake of time, we're going to move ahead. We'll do our additions for further down in the menu, and we will start with our consent agenda. Randy, would you please read?
Excuse me, we just need to get a consensus to add city manager's addition.
Okay. Is there a consensus to add the addition by the city manager?
The
Yes.
toll bridge.
The toll bridge.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Everybody said yes? Okay, we'll try this again. Agenda item number 5, consent agenda. Randy, please read the consent agenda by title.
Happily, Mayor, there are 2 items on the consent agenda. Item A, approval of the February 11, 2020 regular City Commission meeting minutes. Item B, approval of the February 13, 2020 City Commission work session minutes. These are the only items on the consent agenda this evening, Mayor.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve is read.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carried. We are now on the public hearings, which is agenda item 6A. It is a BOA case 2020-01, 351 12th Avenue. Randy, would you please read the title of the agenda?
Sure. This is a quasi-judicial matter. The first matter is considering a variance request from section 94-86A1 to allow for a dock facility to exceed the 50-foot length from the seawall by 6 feet and to allow a variance of 11 feet 4 inches into the side yard setback of 8 inches for the property located at 351 12th Avenue, Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, and legally described as Indian Beach Re-Revised 2nd Edition, Block 89, Lot 13, parcel number 06 3015 42 066 089 0130. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding and a quasi-judicial proceeding. though you've come from a subordinate board in which we do quasi-judicial proceedings for your benefit and for that of the audience, in a quasi-judicial proceeding, you are not making the law, but rather applying the law to establish criteria. You will apply the law based on the competent, substantial evidence and testimony provided to you this evening. Before we begin with the quasi-judicial proceeding, have any members of this body conducted a site visit for the limited purpose of analyzing this application? No. That is to say, you didn't just drive by it, but you went to it for this purpose.
No.
All have responded in the negative. Has any member of this board had any ex parte communications with the applicant? No.
No.
All have responded in the negative. With that, we'll begin the process again for the benefit of all present and those who aren't accustomed to the process. The city staff will make its presentation and receive any questions. The applicant will make its application, applicant or its agent will make its presentation and receive any questions. At that point, we will take any testimony and comment from the public. The city staff will have an opportunity to close. Applicant will get the last word, and then this body will close the public hearing and have its discussion and ultimately reach its conclusion. So with that, before we begin, will anybody who intends to offer testimony on this matter please stand and raise your right hand. That would include city staff, the applicant, their agent, or anybody who intends to speak on this application for 351 12th Avenue. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Hetty?
All right, this is 351 12th Avenue. Just a little history on this. There's two variances on the agenda tonight, 351 and 353, that are adjacent to each other. Originally, they had a permit from the city to do an adjoining dock, where they combined the two together. They had two piers going out with the dock in between it. The DEP or Pinellas County would not let them do that because of the mangroves on there. So now we're looking at them separately. You can see, this is 351 12th, there's mangroves out here, and you can see the shallowness of the water. And here's just another picture. I mean, the houses are under construction now. So, and you can see all the mangroves that are adjacent. And so what they're doing is trying to do the piers within the mangrove area, so they don't do too much damage to the mangroves. Also, there's another picture at the end here. They are requiring them to elevate at least 5 feet above the water level and above the seagrass, because there's seagrass in that shallow water beyond the mangroves. So basically, the pier is going to go out 10 feet, then raise up to 5 feet above the water level, and then go out for 56 feet. That is nothing we can control, raising that height there, because that's the state is requiring that. What we're looking at is the extra length of 6 feet and the distance to the adjacent neighbors.
Does any of the commission at this time have any questions for Hetty? Okay. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Okay, one more thing. The staff did recommend approval, and the Board of Adjustments recommended approval.
Joe Place with Enterprise Marine. Everything that Hetty said is correct. One of the more important things that the county was recommending and why they disapproved the original permit that was issued by the city was the seagrass. That's the reason for raising the property up. The Army Corps of Engineers is the one that has the regulations about being 5 foot above the mean high water line over seagrass. The new dock configuration between this and the next one on the agenda has greatly reduced the scale of the docks going out. Each property will lose at least 160 feet of square footage of docks, so this has been reduced greatly from the original permit that the city approved.
Is there anyone on the commission that has any questions for the applicant? Any questions for the applicant? Okay, if it's okay with you, Joe, I'd like you to sit at the front seat right there in case we're gonna open it to public hearing in case, and then we'll have you come back up. That would be okay. Okay, I'm gonna open the public hearing on this agenda item. Is there anyone who would like to speak concerning this agenda item at this time? Okay, here we go. Hi, John.
John Thayer, 1819 Bay Boulevard. I lived on 12th there on that side for 7 years with many boats, and it is very shallow. So I have no problem whatsoever with another 6 feet. The problem I have, and it flashed up here, I tried to review it in the book, and it's hard to look at. These are very large, pie-shaped lots, pie-shaped out to the water edge. And I was looking more for the dock one, please. And if I read this, yeah, there we go. If I read this correctly, those 2 boat lifts are going to be less than 3.5 feet apart. All right, and I know if I lived there, I don't want to be washing fish guts and scales and pelican crap off my boat and blowing it onto the neighbors, and I wouldn't want them doing it to me. And as large as lots as those are, there just seems like, why would they move one of those boat lifts over to the other side? Especially on the further east property. I don't even see that lot line there, but that's my consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else at this time who'd like to come forward concerning this agenda item? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Right. Hetty, do you have any more comments?
No, I don't.
Applicant, would you like to come forward and make any comments?
As far as one neighbor not wanting the other, these neighbors have, both joint neighbors have signed off again on the variance for each giving approval. The adjacent properties on each side next to them have signed off giving their approval. So the clients have already got approval from the neighbors. I don't know how that would affect anyone else down the line. And the 6 foot going out further, that was because of the seagrass in the county. That was the county's recommendation. But both clients that are shown in this, the original dock was coming across and they were connecting on there. So they had originally been approved at the dock crossing the property line before. So everybody is agreed and approved on it.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant on this agenda? Anything else with the staff? Okay.
Okay. If it was in a boating community, if you were in a marina, you'd have boats right next door to each other too, so it's nothing unusual.
Okay, is there a motion to approve or deny this special exception? Not a variance for 351 12th Avenue.
I'll make a motion to approve 351 12th BOA case 2021-01 and 02.
Okay.
We're only doing one case at a time.
Oh, not the dual? Okay. Then 01.
Is there anyone who'd like to make a second?
I'll second. McCall.
Okay.
Is there any discussion?
Wait a minute.
Oh, sorry.
Diane Flagg was the first, and Joe McCall was the second. Is there any, Diane, would you like to have any discussion?
No.
Commissioner McCall?
No.
Okay. With that, Dan, would you like to call the roll?
Commissioner Hanna,
Yes.
Commissioner McCall,
Yes.
Commissioner Fine,
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
This variance stands approved. No, I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's okay. We're going to go down to the BOA case number 2020-02, 353 12th Avenue. As you heard, that these were together. Now they've been separated. And with that, I'm going to have Randy read.
Has any member of this is considering a variance request from section 94-86A1 to allow for a dock facility to exceed the 50-foot length from the seawall by 6 feet and to allow a variance of 9 feet 4 inches in the side yard setback, leaving the side yard setback to 2 feet 8 inches for the property located at 353 12th Avenue, Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, and legally described as Indian Beach Re-Revised, 2nd Edition, Block 89, Lot 14, parcel 06-3015-420660890140. Has any member of this body had any ex parte communications with the applicant? Has any member of this body conducted a site visit for the limited purpose of evaluating this application?
No.
With that, will anybody who intends to offer any testimony concerning the BOA case number 2020-02 for 353 12th Avenue, please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are going to give before this body is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. With that, Eddie.
This is for 353 12th Avenue, the lot that was adjacent to the one that we just previously saw. Here again, we see the shallow seagrass, the shallow water with the seagrass is present, and some mangroves. There's some other shots of the water, and again, the docks. And we're looking at the exceeding to go out further for the 6 feet. And then also have to raise it to 5 feet above the water level for the Army Corps of Engineers. So, and actually, we repeat what we said before, is that it was originally a joint dock, and they had to separate them because the platform was too big. The staff did recommend approval, and so did the Board of Adjustments.
Does anyone on the commission have any questions for Hetty at this time? With that, if the applicant is here, would you please come forward?
Joe Place with Enterprise Marine. This is basically the same because it was a joint configuration to start with. Again, reducing the square footage of the previously permitted docks by Indian Rocks Beach. Has been changed to meet Pinellas County request and Army Corps of Engineers.
Does anyone on the commission have any questions for the applicant? Okay. I'm going to have you sit, Joe, again. I'm going to apologize while we go through this. Is there anyone we're going to go out to public hearing now. If there's anyone who would like to speak at this time, please come forward on this agenda item. Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing. And Hetty, is there anything else you would like to add to this?
Not at this time.
Any questions from the commission for Hetty or the applicant? Is there anything else that you would like to say at this time? Okay, with that, close the public hearing. Is there a motion to deny or approve BOA case 2020-02, 353 12th Avenue?
Madam Mayor, motion to approve BOA case 2020-02.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Does the maker have any comments?
No.
Diane, do you have any comments?
No comment.
Okay, Deanne, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner McFall? McCall.
Yes.
Not doing good with names today. Commissioner Fly?
Yes.
Commissioner Hannah?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. We will now move on to BOA case 2020-03, 531 Harbor Drive North. Randy, would you please read by the title of the agenda?
Happily, Madam Mayor. Board of Adjustment case number 2020-03, 531 Harbor Drive North, considering a variance request from section 110-2921B to allow for a hedge to exceed 3 feet in height within 15 feet of the rear lot line for the property located at 531 Harbor Drive North, Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, and legally described as Brown's addition to re-revised map of Indian Beach, lot 21, parcel number 06-3015-1242-0000210. This is also a quasi-judicial proceeding. This is for a variance. I would just, the only note I wish to add in this one, this is different than a lot of the variances you're accustomed to seeing in this body. We're not talking about a structural variance. This is a variance from an enforcement of a code provision regulating hedges. You have the packet, and you hear the testimony. Before we move forward, is there anybody who has had any member of this body who's had any ex parte communications with the applicant?
No.
I
No.
have,
You have?
yes.
Would you please disclose the nature of those communications?
The applicant came to my Monday with the mayor.
To speak precisely about this application?
Yes, he did.
Okay, and can you please disclose the nature of that in the interest of preserving the impartiality of the quasi-judicial process?
He brought some pictures and he showed me the hedges and just talked to me about his issues with trimming them.
Okay. Do you feel that communication in any way impairs your ability to impartially adjudicate this matter?
I do not.
Okay. Has any member of this body conducted a site visit for the limited purpose of evaluating this application? Mr. Fleck?
No.
Mayor?
No.
All responding in the negative. Will anybody who intends to offer any testimony before this body, this includes city staff, applicant, their agent, or any member of the public who intends to speak on this matter, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are going to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
You
You may be seated.
Eddie, would you please do the presentation?
Let's.
Okay, this project parcel is located at 531 Harbor Drive North. You can see that it's a very landscaped property, and the subject in question is this area between this lot to the north and the owner's lot. This is the view standing inside the applicant's property, at about 15 feet back, looking out through his yard, and that's to show the view that they would get from the adjacent property. This is the adjacent property with the from the owner who filed the complaint against Mr. Hopley at 531 Harbor Drive. You can see the palm trees here that are not cut down for a hedge, which we require a 3-foot hedge, no higher than 3-foot hedge, 15 feet back from the property line. This is in September of 2019. In February 2020, we did go, met with him on site, talked to him about it. He did thin out the trees some, but, or they're palm trees, I guess. But the way the palms grow, they grow up in, like a couple stems together. They're not like a single palm tree. So, and this is just another view, through the Areca palms.
Eddie, put that back up. I want to ask you.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the palms on that side, that's the
Applicant's property.
property.
Mhm.
And then this fence, whose fence is this?
I'm not sure whose it is.
It's on our property.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Any of the commissioners have any questions at this time? I'm going to have the applicant come forward.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, City Attorney. My name is Alan Hopley. I live at 531 Harbor Drive North. I purchased the house 7 years ago and did extensive landscaping, as Eddie mentioned in one of the pictures. It's been a great community. Love the people. We got great friends on the street and around the neighborhood. The house, the house adjacent to me was purchased by a pair of flippers. At the last meeting, there's a number of things I want to address because I was a little bit upset after the last meeting. I believe I was slandered, and there was people that blatantly lied under oath. The first one was the previous owners who sold it to the current residents, said that she had called the police on me several times. That is 100% false, and it was definitely a blatant lie after being sworn in. I do have a police report. Nobody had ever called the police on me, and I have it right here if anybody would like to see it. There was one other incident where she did call the police, but it was on my other neighbor. And the incident was friends of ours who we let use our house. We did not rent our house to anybody. It is not a rental house. It was a friend of theirs who was visiting. She had one tire on the city grass, and she called the police.
Sir, if you could keep the comments relevant to the application before you as it relates to the
Well, I'm
palm trees.
trying to get at that because there was some very slanderous and
I understand the record this body is considering is confined to a determination about trees.
I understand, thank you. So we'll get back to the trees then. When the new neighbor purchased the property, I went over to introduce myself because I understood there was a complaint about our palm trees. So I went over to talk to him, introduced myself. He was telling me he was going to build a dock. I said, great, you want to come over to our place and see our dock, see what we've done? He just goes, no, you blocked my view. So then I met with the Honorable Mayor, and one thing we did discuss was, could she get myself and a neighbor together with her and a judge? Sounds like a good idea. 2 attempts were made by city employees to contact him. He did not return calls, nor did he, and a card was left for him as well. He did not respond to that. So we were trying, my point is, Randy, is we've made several attempts, even as recent as 2 weeks ago. I tried to talk to him again. Sunday night, I now have a false police report that was filed against me by the neighbor. So this is escalating. I do not want this to escalate. I've made 3 attempts to try and resolve it in a personable fashion, all denied. His property, he hasn't cut the grass. He's got a trailer parked on his front lawn. And I think perhaps he has received a notice to at least cut his lawn. I would think there should be something that you can't park your trailer on your front lawn. I don't know. I think that's all I have to say at the moment. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Is there anyone who has any questions for the applicant? Any other commissioners at this time? Ellen, would your attorney like to say something at this time before we, okay.
I would,
Thank you.
Take 2. Subsequent to the last meeting, Mr. Hopley again trimmed his palm trees. I have new pictures. They're probably about a week or so old,
Yeah.
which I would like to submit for view if I may. Hand them to them. I'm used to court, I can't approach the bench.
Yeah, you can.
Is there one for each one?
Yes. After the last meeting, a letter was sent by the new owners of the property. They said they didn't get a fair hearing because they didn't understand what was going on, and so a letter was written. Focus of the letter is 1 paragraph about the view, which has greatly improved, as you can see by the new pictures, and the other one was the root balls of the palm trees. The concern was the palm roots were coming in, we're going to ruin the seawall, we're going to ruin the irrigation system and all that. Mr. Hopley took it upon himself to hire an arborist who is also here with us today, who prepared a report. And I also have that for you. The whole thing, I think, it boils down to the definition of hedge. Those are areca palms I asked Siri, I looked at Webster's dictionary, I looked at all of it, but it's a fence or boundary formed by closed growing bushes or shrubs. That's just one of them, that was Siri. There, I have like 5 or 6 of them, I won't go on with it. These are trees. These are absolutely trees. Mr. Hopley has instructed the landscapers, I believe, to keep them trimmed so that there is no more of the bottom sprouting, I guess you would call it. And he has made, as he said, several attempts to contact the new owner, Mr. Radowick. One of the things that resonated after the last hearing is one of the board members said, well, there's a lot of properties in Indian Rocks Beach that have palms like that near the water. So I think maybe not wanting to open a can of worms. Mr. Hopley, I believe, has taken great steps to do the right thing, to keep those trees clean. Even Ms. Hetty referred to them as trees. They're palm trees. And I would like, if you have any questions, the arborist is here. It's a notarized report from him, the pictures and his license. Mr. Radowick said that he wanted a copy of his license because he was going to do something, I don't know. Thought he would lose his license. So Mr. Gray has provided that. Okay.
Is that all?
That's all I have.
Does anyone have any questions for the attorney? Diane?
Just go over again how many times these have been trimmed back. And-
Since the report,
Yeah.
twice.
Okay.
I think we're okay.
That's it.
Eddie, do you want to add anything before I go out to public hearing?
I was just gonna say that, there was a Scrivener's error in our, in your staff report for the commission that stated that the staff approved this. We did deny this. The staff recommended denial, and the Board of Adjustment recommended denial with a vote for 4 to 1.
Thank you for that. Okay.
May I just say one more thing?
You're going to have a chance to come back up, Alan.
Okay.
So I'll let you, once we're going to open the public hearing, and then anyone, we're going to open the public hearing now. Is there anyone who would like to come forward at this time? Hi.
I'm Horace David.
Hi.
The 529 Harbor Drive.
Okay.
I'm the neighbor who see this every day.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, I sent to the staff my pictures. They wasn't here. Why you guys didn't show my pictures? By the way, who did this picture? Who trespassed my land to do this picture?
We're not gonna
This is illegal picture.
Actually, yeah.
So, no, we're not doing a back and forth, sir. You can make your presentation about why it should be denied.
This is illegal picture, taken. 15 feet is way beyond that, on the left side. Way, this is only 6 feet, what he trimmed. 6 feet by federal law, what we got meeting next week with the U.S. Army engineers. They protect the federal law about the seawall. The 6 feet from the seawall, nobody can plant anything. Mr. Hopley planted 6 inches from the seawall. Even if those are trees or hedges or however they call them, they cannot exceed the current law, which is 3 feet. That's it. We are a country of the law. This is a tourist from Canada. Maybe they got different laws over there, but we have to teach them to protect the law, regulations, and everybody's view. who I paid a lot of money to get this view. That's it.
Okay. Hetty, can you answer any?
No, there's no
Okay.
need to.
Do any of the commissioners have any?
I'm not served here fair. Because
Excuse me?
my teachers wasn't here. I sent.
Okay, hey. No, we're not gonna talk like that here, okay?
They're in the packet that was sent to you, all of his pictures, everything that he
Pictures
sent,
are here.
they're all in the packet.
Oh,
They're all-
that's it.
All right, thank you very much.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak?
Speak on this agenda item. If not, the applicant may come back forward. Or staff, do you have anything else to say? Is there anyone else who would like to say, because we're closing the public hearing?
This is that moment you see in the movies, speak now or forever hold your peace. If there's anybody who wishes to speak on
Would you
this
like to
matter,
speak?
please come forward.
Yeah.
Hi, sir.
My name is Clarence Eichman, and I live at 527 Harbor Drive North. I moved in there when there was no road in front of my house. There was piles of dirt for the question around the area that they had put up the drag line. So no roads. So I'm 91 years old.
Wow.
So
You look awesome.
I want to tell you what I know about the situation. I've seen a lot of people move in and out. A lot of people are going, good friends that are gone now. But the thing that was renters in the property when they put these palm trees in. And he was questioning the people putting them in, that was just be at 3 feet, and they said yes, they'd keep it trimmed that way. And so the time went on, a number of people have made complaints about it. I live at, I can see down that way and it blocks a lot of view. It's too high and it should be cut down. It should be with the 3 feet. That's my thoughts.
Anything else, Clarence? Okay, thank you for coming tonight. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this time? Yes, sir.
My name is Marcelo Dupolsky. I represent my mother, which is the resident at 529 Harbor Drive. Because of their limited expression of English, I know it's a little hard to understand what they're trying to come across. At the end of the day, this is a property they purchased. It's not a house flip, as he likes to mention it. It's a home they want to eventually build a nicer home on top of and improve the community. But everything they do, including the new dock they just put in, everything's done to the code. And we want our neighbors to also do everything to the code, which extends to the trees here. Whatever you want to call it, a hedge or a tree. Merriam-Webster defines a hedge also as trees, so I don't have Siri. So that's our main issue, is blocking the view that my parents have paid for. It was not a cheap view to pay for, and it's getting blocked just because they spend a lot of money on their own property, which is fine, they're allowed to do that. Not when it blocks our enjoyment of our own property. That is our main issue here. And as far as the personal attacks with his history with other neighbors, that's not really our concern. What he does on Sundays with false reports and all that stuff, he knows what he did Sunday also, so. But,
Well, we're not here for that.
yes.
Okay.
So that's my main concern, is we do everything by the code. The trailer he's referring to was a jet ski trailer, a tiny jet ski trailer that is moving into the garage most of the time. So.
Well, we're here to talk about the hedges, but
Yes.
thank you very much. Okay, thank you for coming. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this time on this agenda item? Now I'm going to close the public hearing and have the applicant come forward.
Staff, it's fine.
And before you say anything, I'm going to let Hetty finish, but you can stay up there.
Thank you.
Hetty?
I'm good. And I was just mad.
So, Hetty, okay, go ahead.
The view that they're talking about, we're on a curve, as I think some of the pictures have shown. And from their house, the only thing that they're going to be looking at is our backyard and my boat on the boat lift. I think you saw some pictures of that, right there. That is from our property, looking back there. If you looked on an angle, you're going to be seeing our deck and other foliage. Those big trees there that are very close to the seawall were there when we bought the house and we redid the seawall. So it did not have any kind of impact whatsoever on the seawall, and that's the view that they're asking for. They put their dog out and they have a chair out there and they sit and watch, you know, in our backyard. So they've got the full view of our backyard if they want. Then they've got a wider view when they go on their dock. And I'm fine with that, you know, that's their dock. I just don't want to see the personal part of it escalating any further, because it has gotten silly at this point. Okay,
Does
thank you
anyone
very
have
much.
any questions for Alan? You know, it's a real shame that we have two neighbors and we're fighting about a hedge.
I agree.
And I told you that when you came in.
Yes, you did.
And there are all these bad feelings, and I hate to see that. You live on a beautiful street, and, you know, somebody's not going to be happy tonight, whatever we decide. And I hate to see that. I hate to see the neighbor versus neighbor. That's something that we try to work on when people come in here. So,
With that, I think I would close the public
public
hearing
hearing.
at this point.
Yes,
Mayor.
and you may say
Again,
that.
thank you very much.
So at this point in the hearing, for those who are, because we have a lot of guests, at this point in the hearing, the body will discuss the matter on its own, reach its conclusions. If you have any additional questions of staff or otherwise, you can direct them at your discretion, Mayor, but at this point, it's for the four of you to discuss.
Do any of you have any questions or comments? Phil?
Question for the city attorney. The only guaranteed view that I know of is directly out the back of the property. Is that accurate, or are you also allowed 45 degrees to the sides?
As a matter of common law, and that is case law jurisprudence, generally speaking, in Florida, you don't have a right to a view across your neighbor's property. You have a right out to the outward from your property, following the property lines. The issue in this case is slightly distinguishable in as much as the code provides restrictions as to where trees can be planted in proximity to property lines, and that's the issue here. The city's code is not specific in its language as to view, but effectively, by its function, it seems to be protecting a portion of that, much in the same way that you have code saying a fence that is 50% opaque and things like that. So, at common law, you generally don't have a right to a view across your neighbor's property, but the issue here goes a little bit beyond what do you have a right to a view of, and does this fall within the scope of the code, and if so, is it this body's position that a variance is appropriate and that the code should not be applied to this property? Okay. And remember, as you discuss variance law, a variance runs with the land, and so that is that's not an exception for 6 months. That is this code, this particular provision shall not apply here because the criteria are satisfied and based on the testimony received.
One other question. I think it's imperative to find out if this is a tree or a shrub.
The evidence has been submitted to you, and that is for you, the four of you, to determine as you discuss.
The city has determined that what he's planted is in violation of the code. So the issue before you is not for the commission to decide or determine what species of plant this is. In fact, I think the gentleman still has a court date. The issue is whether you want to allow him to leave what he's planted. The determination of a violation is not for the commission. It's we've already made the determination.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Explain the court date. What court date?
Separate and distinct from these proceedings, Mayor.
Okay. Diane?
I'll start. I would, first of all, the landscaping as it looks is very attractive, and as much as I would like to say that two neighbors ideally should be able to manage their properties, so, you know, there's no need to come before the board or court cases to be able to settle landscaping issues. But when we look at the code, I see no hardship. I don't see any hardship involved. So code would take precedence for me, and it doesn't present any reasonable hardship for the use of the property. So I'm gonna have to vote not to approve the variance at this point.
Joe?
Sorry. Really my only question, which I think you already answered, and you mentioned with the Army Corps of Engineers, because it looked like there were trees even at the one out past this, right, that are along the fence line. I guess I'm trying to distinguish the difference. I mean, it's a palm tree, it's within 15 feet.
I would answer that question by saying that the staff has not determined that any other trees on his property are in violation. We've determined that the area that he planted that's in question tonight can be classified as a tree, a shrub, and even a grass. And we've determined that he's in violation, so we don't see any other violations on his property other than what he's asked for y'all to grant a variance for.
Okay, thank you.
If there's not any other comments, I'm going to look for a motion to either approve or deny this variance.
There's a motion on the floor.
No.
No, she indicated her preference, but did not formally move. So at present, there's
No motion.
no motion, and still open for discussion if you desire, or a motion on the floor would be appropriate as well. You can have additional, if you have it, sure.
But
Oh, you
you
moved
can
it.
make
You
a
were noting.
motion and have more discussion.
I'll make a motion on 531 Harbor Drive North, case number 2020-03, to deny the variance.
The motion on the floor is to deny. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion on the matter?
Diane, you have any?
No further discussion.
Phil?
No, it's to me, it's distilled down to what the ordinance is, and it doesn't comply with that, and no hardship.
Any other comments, Joe?
Before we call the roll, Mayor, because we're in the same posture this happened at the Board of Adjustment as well. It is very rare we move in the negative. Typically you move in the affirmative and it fails. In this particular case, you've moved in the negative. So the motion on the floor is to deny. So if you are voting yay or aye, you are voting to deny. Yes to deny, not yes to grant the variance.
Right.
Is everybody clear on that?
Yes.
Okay, with that.
Commissioner McCall,
No.
Commissioner Hannah,
Yes.
Commissioner Fly,
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
By your vote of 3-1, you have denied the variance. The variance is denied. That is the conclusion of this hearing. And Mayor, we can move on to the next item on the agenda.
We are now in other legislative matters, resolution number 2020-02, a resolution. Randy, will you read the resolution?
I will, Mayor, if you could give me one moment to get through the materials.
Randy, I
Yes.
put the agenda on there and it has the full title.
Resolution 2020-02, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, appointing a member of the City Commission to serve as Vice Mayor Commissioner and providing for an effective date. For those of you who have, it's presently a blank. Typically, you don't see that in a resolution beyond the effective date. That blank is because what we do is we ask you guys to nominate somebody to be the Vice Mayor. That person is then, their name will be written in if whether they get voluntold or otherwise accept that position. So with that, Is there any desire to appoint a vice mayor at this point, or any suggested individual?
I'd like to nominate Phil Hanna. He's the senior on the board here as mayor.
I will nominate Diane Fleck.
Yeah, they can nominate each other.
Wow.
So would you accept the nomination?
I would.
Okay. Would you accept the nomination? She would not accept the nomination. What are you going to do about that? I would want to go up against her.
So somebody has to make a motion and then.
I mean, we can do that by consensus. Is there a consensus to approve Commissioner? Well, it's a resolution. We should do a roll call vote just to be safe. So is there a motion and a second on the floor?
A motion by Diane Flagg. Who would like to make the second?
McCall, second.
Okay. Ian, would you call? Is there any?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Vice Mayor Hanna.
I still have the shirt. Thank you.
We are now at 7B, resolution number 2020-03.
This is City of Indian Rocks Beach Resolution Number 2020-03, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, appointing a voting delegate and first and second alternate voting delegates to represent the City of Indian Rocks Beach at the Barrier Islands Government Council, otherwise known as the Big C meetings, and providing for an effective date. This is a reading of Resolution Number 2020-03 by title only. Same dance, different issue.
Is there anyone who would like to nominate anyone to be on the Big C?
I will nominate Diane Fleck.
Second.
Okay, there's a first delegate and a second delegate.
So there's a voting delegate, which is usually the mayor.
Right, but then there's an alternate after, so.
So we're voting for the first and second alternate.
Okay.
So let's take these in succession. First delegate, traditionally the mayor, from what I understand, based on staff
That's the
report.
voting delegate.
The voting delegate. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
are you capable of
Yes,
serving in
yes,
that role?
yes.
Okay. Any opposition to the mayor being the first delegate?
No.
Okay. With that, we need the second, or first alternate voting delegate. That's the second blank on the page.
Diane Fleck.
Okay. There's a first alternate voting delegate and second alternate voting delegate. So we just need one more name. Who's it going to be?
Joe McCall. It's his birthday.
What a happy birthday.
What a gift.
What a say never got me. Joe, are you comfortable being the second alternate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. With that, Madam Clerk, the City Commission is appointing the mayor as the city's voting delegate, Commissioner Flagg as the first delegate, and Commissioner McCall as the second delegate, pending the vote, but those are the names presently proposed. Is there a motion to approve as described?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
We are now at resolution number 2020-04. It's a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Indian Rocks Beach vacating a 10-foot utility easement. Who would like to, Randy, will you be reading this?
Yes, Mayor. City of Indian Rocks Beach Resolution 2020-04. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, vacating a 10-foot utility easement as described in official records of Pinellas County Book 16425, page 115, and an egress easement as described in official records of Pinellas County Book 17228, page 383, finding there is no public need for the easements and providing for the effective date hereof. This has been a reading of resolution number 2020-04 by title only.
Eddie, are you presenting?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, when they actually went, from 2006, when they vacated the alley, they had requested that there would be utility and egress for the city's purposes from 25th Avenue north to the south of this property. That was recorded about a year later after the after the alley was vacated. Since then, we have approved the new plan for the PUD, and we're going to have a wall down this side, and we were proposing to vacate these utility and utility easements prior to recording the plat, just to clean it up. And the city, the staff does not see a need for this. Is there any questions?
We're going to open the public comment at this time concerning this agenda item. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward and speak on this? Okay, we're going to close the, would you like to come forward? We're going to close the public hearing. Does anyone have any questions for Hetty?
No.
Any questions? Okay. Then I'm looking for a motion on resolution 220-04.
Motion to approve resolution number 2020-04.
Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second.
So Commissioner McCall made a motion for resolution number 2020-04, and Commissioner Flagg has seconded the motion. Is there any comments on this motion? Commissioner McCall?
No.
Commissioner Flagg?
No.
Okay, at this time, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we're going to do resolution number 2020-05. Randy, would you read the resolution?
Happily, Mayor. City of Indian Rocks Beach, Resolution 2020-05, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, approving the walk at Indian Rocks Beach plat located at 2510 Gulf Boulevard, providing for recording and providing for the effective date hereof. This has been a reading of Resolution 2020-05 by title only.
Okay, Hetty, would you like to?
Yes, this is for the approval of the plat. The plat has been reviewed, and there are two conditions of the approval, and that, first of all, they have to vacate the easement, record the easement. Then we're gonna get a new title search, then we're gonna file the plat.
Okay.
So we're just looking for the approval of the plat, which, you know, you had approved the PUD concept before. Once they get the plat filed, they're gonna be starting the full building permit. So they're waiting to get in there.
Does anyone have any questions for Hetty at this time? If not, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward and speak on this agenda item at this time? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any other questions for Hetty? Just checking. Okay, then I'm looking for a motion for resolution number 2020-05.
Motion to approve 2020-05.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Vice Mayor Hannah and Diane, Commissioner Flagg, she seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Now we're on to our work session item, which is 8A. And who would like to start? Greg, would you like to start that?
I'll start this in melee. No, I'm just kidding. Back about 2 or 3 months ago, we had one of my neighbors, local residents, that submitted a written matter to the commission concerning on-street parking. And then the commission asked me to set up a time to talk about on-street parking, so that's what we're doing. I probably will have some comments and recommendations later, but Madam Mayor, I think it would be appropriate to take the input from citizens that are here for any ideas or concepts they have or concerns they have about on-street parking, and then we can address it after that.
Okay. Is the commission okay with that if we go right out the public hearing?
Yes.
You all have 3 minutes. Anyone who would like to come forward at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing having to do with on-street parking. Bill?
I'm here. Phil Roble, 112 13th Avenue. Some years back, when we actually had the biggest beach party ever, after that week, we were all called into a meeting with the city manager, the police, the fire department, and other officials, and they told the city that they needed to put no parking signs on one side of the residential streets back in the neighborhoods, because during events like that and other times, there's no way a fire truck or anything could get through the way they're parking. So, I mean, it never happened, they never were put up or anything, but on the other side of it, like I know on 12th, where there's an access, they had to put them up all the way, I don't know if they're past First Street right now, or are they just up to First Street? up to First Street, because the traffic, wherever there's a business area up and down Gulf Boulevard, north of Walsingham, you know, there's not enough parking. As we know, there's no parking in Indian Rocks Beach, unfortunately, but you'll get people that'll park. I mean, to me, it's common sense, but then again, a lot of drivers don't have common sense, where they'll park, you know, there'll be one car here and they'll stop straight across from it, even though there's parking all up and down the street. And if you're coming through and those two cars are there, and unless they're parked partially on the grass or something, I mean, it is just so narrow of a spot. A crazy example was we were out riding our bikes on Harbor Drive area, and there were two of the trucks with, I don't know, 18-inch tires sticking. I mean, it was unbelievable the size of the trucks. No cars anywhere on the streets except they were parked right across from one another. And everybody was just about stopping to crawl through them. I mean, I don't know if you want to do the whole city, but I think anywhere between Gulf Boulevard and First Street would be a good area, and maybe even all the way back to Bay Boulevard when you get north on the streets. Because it's just unbelievable the amount of people that, you know, can't use common sense and park where they're not blocking traffic. And especially where, you know, the restaurants, I don't mind people parking up and down our street to go to Salt or to Pajano's or anywhere around there, any business. I'm glad they're coming and going to the business. But park sensibly. Don't park where people can't get through. It's dangerous for kids. I mean, there's a lot of kids up and down the street, especially with USA Grocer there. And it's just parking on one side of the street only. I know I talked to Greg about this before, and he goes, how are you going to decide what side of the street they park on? How did they decide what side they were going to park on 12th? How did they decide what side of the street they were going to park on the other streets that have them? So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to come up at this time? I want to thank all of you for staying tonight too, because we had a long meeting on other things, so I appreciate you being here.
Jerry Newton, 438 Harbor Drive North. I agree 100% with what Phil's saying. One of several reasons only that we moved to this city was the kind of freedoms that we have. Would not be able to live in some of the Bel Air areas where, I mean, I've had friends get cited for washing their boat in their driveway. I mean, we just don't need that. We don't want that kind of nonsense here. We want to live in the city as long as we're not bothering anyone else. I don't agree with parking a giant motorhome in the street for 3 weeks, but it's nice to have the freedom to do that if there's a reason. And maybe there should be a time limit on anything like that. Maybe a week or two is plenty. We could have rules that bring reason to it and common sense to it without restricting the rest of us who live here. But the thing that Phil's talking about, as far as the emergency vehicles, that's a big deal. That's what I'm concerned with, because it's not just First and Gulf Boulevard. I promise you, on Harbor Drive, there are times when we have to slow down with a golf cart to get through there, because there's lawn businesses and trailers and construction and so forth, parked literally side to side. I mean, with my pickup truck, I clip mirrors almost to get through there. And can you imagine if someone's having a heart attack on Harbor Drive North and we can't even get to them with an emergency vehicle? That's ridiculous. We can do better than that. So we can have our freedom, but we have to have some common sense too. Thank you.
Can I ask Jerry a question?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say. Jerry, come back up here for a second.
Jerry, can you talk to the
Come back. I was going to ask you something, so I'm glad that I had it.
So let me see if I understand, and what Phil says makes a lot of sense. We do need our safety vehicles to get through. Are you saying one side of the street parking only?
If that solves that problem. What I'd like to say is, please don't block the street, okay?
No sign.
But with the general public,
that's not a
abide to that. I don't know. If we could put up 150 signs that says, please don't drop let's say, please don't block emergency vehicles access or
Won't matter.
something like that.
Right.
But I don't know that that would solve the problem because I don't think people are,
I doubt it. But
All that.
so your solution, you think, would be one side of the street parking only in the city?
I don't think that that would hurt anybody.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
I don't know.
I just want to be clear, because
Everybody has a little space between their driveway and
Right.
their mailbox or whatever. And maybe one side of the street would be the best way to get it done.
Okay.
Because I don't know that other people would, I don't know that everybody would abide by it otherwise.
Okay, all right.
And you have to give a ticket if they park on the other side, you know. There has to be some
It's
enforcement.
the only
It's not
teeth
gonna
you
work.
have is ticketing.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry.
Rod?
Thanks. Rod Baker, 364 Bahia Vista Drive. You know, when I moved here 17 years ago, one of the reasons we left out on the States was we needed more parking, we needed ample parking. And one of the things I see in the value of my house is that we have ample street parking. I've been parking in the street for 16, 17 years so that my daughters and my wife can be closer to the street. Sometimes my wife leaves very early for work. So that street parking out in front of us on the cul-de-sac is something we see as part of the value in our property, one of the reasons we invested out here. And I have another daughter who's getting ready to start driving Kara soon, so there's going to be another car to park. So I would encourage you guys to really think it through. You know, 5 years ago I woke up and there was a no parking sign in front of my van down the cul-de-sac of Bahia Vista. And I couldn't believe it. It's like, you know, so they said, right in front of your house it's legal to park, but now along the cul-de-sac on one side of the street you cannot. And then I helped them to see, have you done any measurement? Because if people start parking along their houses instead of on that street in that cul-de-sac, no boat's going to be able to get through there and make that turn. You just tighten the whole cul-de-sac up. So I think a unique approach to every single neighborhood is going to be, you know, we offer free parking. That's part of our problem. People come here and they park and they're not from here. And we want to encourage that. But just the enforcement of the existing parking laws that are already in place, I think would solve this problem. And I don't think we need more no parking zones, especially not down on the peninsulas where we live and see that as a part of our value, part of our asset is that we have ample street parking. Please don't restrict that.
Good evening, Darlene Ursanowski, Kavanaugh, representing 450 Harbor Drive South. I also used to live at the end of Harbor Drive North also, and everywhere else on the beach. Anyway, I hate rules, but unfortunately people, like they said earlier, don't have common sense. And when I see people not using their driveways, it's very frustrating. On Harbor Drive, as you know, there's a lot of turns. And so, God forbid, for emergency vehicles, people cannot get through. We do have a big Ford F-350 dually, and there are times we cannot get through at all, whether it is construction people or just people parking in the road, and we have to wait for somebody to move. And that has happened. God forbid if there was a fire truck to have to get through. So I don't know what the answer is. I've talked to this commission for years about it. I've talked to the manager a couple months ago about it. I know there's been different ideas thrown out. I don't really know if one side of the street is an idea either, because I really don't want strange cars parked in front of my house either, to be honest, if you were to put it on my side. Because that could be a security thing if there's some strange car in front of our house. You know what I mean? That could, I don't know what they're doing there. You know, I might have to call somebody and say there's a strange car. And so anyway, our issue is currently people on our street near our house have empty driveways, but they will park in the street at all times. So that's our issue. Driveway's empty, use the driveway. So I would suggest just, I guess you're gonna have to say no street parking, or maybe 2-hour limit or something. I don't know what else. Unfortunately at our house, we have had to call an ambulance several times to our house. As you guys know, my dad had a heart attack, my son had a lung collapse. So we have had to have ambulances in front of our house in the past. So if I have cars parked in front of my house, maybe I don't want cars. Or if we had a fire, so maybe I don't want that street parking on my side. just as an example. My side's free, so, you know, we bought our house, we don't park in front of it for a reason. So I don't want other neighbors or some strange people, you know, that have now these Airbnbs parking in front. So I don't think that's a solution either, to have one side. So I'm just saying all that stuff, so, sorry.
Let me ask you one question while you're up there. We don't normally do this, but we may do this so that we're understanding everybody clearly. So you're saying that many of the neighbors that live there are parking out in front of their property, not in their driveway. And some of those are VRBOs.
And they're huge trucks.
And there are some of those VRBOs, is that what you were saying too?
I don't know who's who, I'm not gonna, you know,
Okay,
what is
so
that?
you're
Somebody-
saying it's neighbors?
Yeah, and they're not even pulled off a little bit to the grass or the ditch. They're way out in the road behind our driveway.
Okay, all right, all right.
And so when you guys talk about common sense, it's like, we've tried.
Okay.
And it's every owner or every visitor. I mean, at what point you have to finally say, okay, enough is enough, I don't want rules either, but.
Thank
And so if you put the no parking on my side, so what, that truck's gonna be parked in front of my house now? Or, you know, my family's house, whatever.
Okay.
So if I have to call for help or fire department,
Okay.
you see, that's
Yes.
not my problem, he's not using his driveway.
Your 3
Or-
minutes are up.
I'm sorry, but.
That's
thank
okay,
you.
we get you.
Okay.
Thank
I'm next up.
Beth McMullen, I'm at 481 Harvard Drive South. I spent about 3 years in the early 80s living in Bel Air Beach in a small house with a 2-car garage, one not a garage, driveway, one right below the other one. And it was very restrictive. It was just the two of us, and even with that restriction, just with that law, we found it very restrictive. We had parties or people that came over, my parents would come over, and they couldn't park in the street, and they were very strict on enforcing it, and it drove us crazy. We moved to Indian Rocks Beach. At the time, we started having kids, and when the kids are little, that's fine. No, they're not driving. But by the time they grow up, we have 3 kids, there's 5 cars in our house. 2 of them are in the garage, but then we're jostling cars all the time. And usually there is someone that ends up on the street, parking on the street, and that's just the way it is when you have most of the majority of these houses all have these small driveways. And I don't know how anybody's gonna park a bunch of cars in those driveways unless they're parking on their grass. And I don't think any of us want that either. So I think that we have been able to manage this for the 24 years I've lived on Harbor Drive South. I would like input maybe with the emergency vehicle or the emergency management to see what they say about it. Maybe they have a different view on it. And they could give us some input as to the difficulty they're having in getting back to our neighborhoods and managing the cars that are parked on either side. Personally, I do not want to see no parking signs in my neighborhood. I know that times have changed with the popularity of our beaches, and we're getting a lot of people coming in that used to not come here because of how crazy Clearwater Beach is. So I know that they put the no parking closer to Gulf Boulevard because those people are having a lot of people parking in their grass and all that, and I understand that. But do we want to do that all the way back into the neighborhoods where we're trying to find places for all of our kids and the cars that we all have? All these years, have we been able to manage this? I don't really see, maybe someone can explain to me the difference now versus then, so that I could better understand why we would do something like that. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Beth. Ron?
Ron Sacred, 368 La Hacienda Drive. The parking issue is a big problem here, especially with emergency vehicles. I drove emergency vehicles for 34 years, fire trucks and ambulances. The ambulances are getting bigger because you have to do more things in the back of them. The fire trucks are getting longer. So I think that one side of the street would be a positive for taking care of this situation. I would not like to see not being able to park in front of your own house, but to get emergency vehicles out and through these small streets, you're going to have to do something about one side of the street, no parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Hi, Joe.
Hi, John Fansteel, 448 Harbour Drive South. I also agree that we don't want parking situation like there is in Bel Air Beach. And we might not need one-side parking to take care of some of the problems. As Ron mentioned, the issue with first responders, we got to remember that ambulances aren't the first responder, it's fire trucks now. And if you have somebody in your house or a neighbor that has a heart attack or a stroke, every second it takes to get there makes a difference. And Harbour Drive North in particular and Harbour Drive South, fire department was not meeting their standards for getting there as it is already. And anybody who's lived on there has seen all the, with the construction, it's really difficult to get through at times. It takes a long time. And also when you have cars parked scattered from one side to the other, then the golf carts go through and they're zigging, zagging back and forth. And that's when people get thrown off the golf carts, particularly with no safety belts. Another issue. So there's some things that you can consider that aren't restricting parking in the sense of one side of the street, or but one example being when people are building property, when the house is being constructed, require that they park in the driveway wherever possible or on the land wherever possible. You can make this part of a building application where they have to tell you where they're going to park their vehicles. Because at least in my experience, that's the major issue. You can just have 3 or 4 contractors parking their cars either side of the road, and people have to figure out how to get through. And the other possibility, I don't know if this would entirely work, but a lot of the problem is, of course, with lawn care and other maintenance people. And if they're licensed to work in Indian Rocks Beach, they at least could be told that they cannot park across from another car on the street. So there are possibly some ways to do it without making it one side only, and without becoming like Bel Air Beach in terms of parking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Daryl Front, 317 10th Avenue. 10th Avenue, the whole top of the street has become mostly short-term rental. And part of the problem is there's no restriction on the number of people that can be in a home. So in many cases, what we're seeing is that there's, at the beginning of the short-term rental, we've got 10 cars at one little house. And I don't know what the answer is, but is there a way to restrict the number of vehicles that can be at a short-term rental? You know, they're advertising saying that it sleeps 16, 18 people. Obviously, you're going to have multiple cars, and that's an issue. We also need to consider the fact that in some of the, like 12th Avenue, there's a big curve, and when you come around that curve, even if they're only parked on one side, it still makes it really difficult to maneuver. And if there are people walking, it becomes a concern for pedestrians as well. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, we have a policeman that lives on that curve, and he parks in the wrong direction on that curve all the time. So I don't know the answer. But it's a Largo policeman. I don't know if there's a way to, you know, I don't know if the one side is really the answer either.
So you don't have any, there isn't any one side on your street at all at this time?
No, not that I know of, but I'm also not in favor of adding more signs, so I don't know the answer.
They don't read them anyway.
That's true.
Thank you, Carol.
Linda Newton, 438 Harbour Drive North. If you go down Harbour Drive North, you'll notice several of us have now taken the easement area and added pavers. And it really makes a difference because now you can pull off the road and you're not blocking from either side. And if you have difficult areas, I know beautiful landscaping and everything may suffer, but it really gives the ability to have a wider street.
Thank you, Linda. Carol?
Carol McLaughlin, 115 21st Avenue. I live in a commercial neighborhood, so I'm used to cars being parked by short-term renters. But in my neighborhood, with the exception of one house so far, we pretty much keep the cars on the parking lots. As a matter of fact, I was in the motel business up until a few months ago for 47 years here in this town. We always had enough parking on the premises for our vehicles and our guests' vehicles. And I think in terms of the short-term rentals that we now have that have proliferated through the community, I have a solution. The only people who can park, who should be able to park, in my opinion, on the street are cars with Indian Rocks Beach parking stickers. So if you have multiple cars, 3 kids, 5 cars, whatever it is, you get a parking sticker for each of your cars, which you get right here at City Hall, and they don't cost anything. If you have a guest overnight and they don't have a parking sticker, you let them park in the driveway and you park one of your stickered cars in the street. This solves the problem. So we know who the residents are, and then we also have to enforce the rules with tickets, towing, whatever it might be. Post office tows, I know that for a fact. Costs $122 to get your car back. But this is, to me, this is a very simple solution. The residents can, and now during the day, of course, people going to the beach, obviously, and up in my neighborhood, everybody parks all over the streets in order to go to the beach. I have no problem with that. Parking overnight, last night I went out 2 o'clock in the morning and there's a car sitting on the side of the street. And I'm thinking, okay, are they in my yard? Are they on my deck downstairs? Are they on the porch upstairs? I agree with the lady who said that it's kind of creepy if you walk out of the house in the middle of the night out on your deck and you notice that there's a car that's been sitting there sometimes for 3 days. It's unnerving. So I think there's a way to control it by just making on-street parking for residents only. I think it's pretty simple. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Hi.
Becky Griffin, 375 La Hacienda, and tonight I'm really glad I'm not up there because we can't agree, so I don't know what you guys are gonna do. I have 2 issues with parking. I've been complaining about La Hacienda for a very long time. I've chewed RV's ear many times about it. It's a little better. We don't have as much construction. I think Mike Kelly's helped get rid of the boats that were parked on the street. They're gone. But coming here tonight, we had 5 cars on the street. Driveway's empty. I understand you have kids, you don't want to be jacking your cars back and forth, but it makes it an obstacle course for us to get off our street. I would like to see no overnight parking. I want people to be able to come to my house for a party, so maybe you enforce it from 3 to 5 a.m. The rest of the time, I can have my lawn crew, I can have my plumber, you know, that kind of thing, and then from 3 to 5, no cars on the street. Our cul-de-sac is so small, it shouldn't have any parking. Fire truck can barely get around it. You guys all know from the Christmas parade, watching that truck go through there. My other problem is on East Gulf Boulevard. On really beautiful weekends, everybody parks there to go to the beach on the west side, and they park right up to the edge of the next street. So when you stop at the stop sign, you have to creep out into the street to see if there's a car coming. And I'd like to see them backed up, maybe 25 feet, you know, signs so that you can't park all the way to the next street, because you really can't see when you try to come out. And it happens at 8th, it happens at all the little streets there. I'm sure it's happening on First too. I just don't happen to come that way. So, thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Maria Hishmati, 315 La Hacienda. In a way, I agree with Carol, the parking on the street should be restricted just for residents, I think. And also what Becky just mentioned, more and more beachgoers are parking on the Gulf, East Gulf, and they're starting to slowly come into La Hacienda and Bahia Vista and park in those streets. And if we have like the parking restriction for residents, that might in a way help us. Because we don't want that, it's just getting too much. Every time when it's a good weather, nice weekend, this Gulf is full. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Rebecca Sacra, 368 La Hacienda Drive. I just want to say that whatever you decide to do, you have to have enforcement. I think it's already a rule on the books that you can't park a certain distance from a street, right, cross street, and yet people are parking right up to there, as someone else said, and it's very hard to see. It's very much of an obstacle, but I've never seen those people get a ticket. I wish I had known you could talk to the sheriff before the meeting, because I would have asked, how many tickets are actually being issued in our community, because there are a lot of violations. So that's my only suggestion, is whenever you decide to do it, there is some enforcement for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. Carol, did you have one more comment? Come on up.
Carol McLaughlin, 115 21st Avenue. That is another problem, another solution that I had, that you must be 30 feet from a stop sign. It's been the same law since when I got my driver's license, way back when you got it when you were 14 in Florida. I have seen at my corner, people park literally under the stop sign, and a sheriff's deputy go past them. One time I flagged a sheriff's deputy down and suggested that that person needed a ticket, and I think he did ticket them. But laws and ordinances, they aren't any good unless they're enforced. The stop sign ordinance is not being enforced, the 30 feet from a stop sign. But unless our ordinances are enforced, what's the point? So that maybe we just need to urge the deputies to ticket people who are parked improperly already, even without a new ordinance.
Well, they're listening, they're here tonight. Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to come up and speak tonight? Any else?
Some comment to make. I'm Jean Scott and I live at 420 Harbor Drive South. I think if you get some parking restrictions for some of these streets, that it might do some impact on some of our short-term rentals. Because we have a house down the street across from Phil. Last weekend, 8 cars all over the place. Weekend before that, they had a, what do you call those things, Phil? Motorhome, and cars, and golf carts. So maybe if you get a strong parking ordinance or have it enforced, you might can do something with these short-term rentals.
Thank you.
You had to bring short-term rentals into it. So I'm Rod Baker here now as president of RETEC 314 10th Avenue North, Flippers Lagoon. And I want to let you know 2 things. We have the #1 ranked by customer reviews, VRBO, in all 5,500. And I'm good with not letting my tenants park on the streets where my neighbors live. So I think it's a great idea to let residents park on the streets, but VRBOs have to account for their own parking capacities. Now, if you were to try to take away our parking in front of our street at our primary residence, I would see that as a direct assault against the value of our property.
Thank you, Rob. Anyone else? Okay, no one else, I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, we'll go to staff. Would you like to
Well, you can tell this
comment?
This is a real easy topic to get your hands around. Let me give you some information that I've looked up, and I've talked to the two or three primary staff members that would receive complaints about parking or illegal parking or whatever. And we're only aware of 4 complaints in 2019 about illegal parking. One was a boat that was parked on the curve of a cul-de-sac. Mike Kelly quickly went around and just asked the people, they were full-time residents, just to move around the corner and not block the road. That was October 17, 2019. We had October 15, 2019, we had a vacation rental that people complained about. What we just heard, large number of vehicles. There was no violations there. As we've talked about before, and this is going to be no surprise to the commission, we don't have any restrictions about people loading up their property with vehicles or boat trailers or whatever. On June the 6th, going back in that year, we had a different vacation rental complaint, and they were all legally parked. The biggest issue was, and I get it, was that they were getting parked over the whole front yard and that kind of thing. And then back in April 4th, we had a letter from an individual that complained about, it was over towards Philbrook, that part of town, where they complained about there was a section of block. We didn't go quite on that street, we didn't go quite all the way to first to put no parking signs up. And that was quickly addressed. We extended the no parking signs down to the first. I'll tell you, and y'all remember this, about time goes by so fast now, I don't know how long it was, but at least 3 or 4 years ago, we had, was it 14? His name was about that. We had a work session concerning the beach. We talked about litter, we talked about parking, we talked about a variety of things. And as a result of that, we increased the number, we increased the number of decal resident parking at all the beach accesses. Most of the beach accesses have got 1 or 2 additional spaces. A lot of the beach accesses now have multiple resident parking. The other thing that came out of that, and that also was what led to us having 2 part-time code people. Now I have a full-time person that might work weekends and overtime and all that. But another thing that came out of it, and that's what I think Phil Revelle was talking about earlier, is that it resulted in literally every cross street on Gulf Boulevard, on the east side of the Gulf Boulevard, either both sides of the street or at least one side of the street, for at least that first block, is restricted now to try to limit visitor parking where people park and want to go to the beach. And we all understand that who's going to go like the beach. So I say all that to say this is not an easy topic. It's real easy for somebody to go to the podium and say, make one street or the other no parking. If you want to do that, pass a resolution that tells me which side, and we'll sue them all, like either the north side of the street or the south, because I can tell you that's not going to be received well, because you've already heard tonight that if you just say you pass an ordinance, you amend it, and you say no more parking on the north side of the street, and the staff goes out and does no parking on the north side, you've already heard tonight that what's going to happen is the people that live on the south side of all the streets are not going to be happy about it because everybody's parking on their side. So this is not a big complaint thing that we've had a lot of complaints about. It's hit and miss. Vacation rentals have been mentioned. Let me just delicately address that. I would not recommend any action by the commission to put any rules in place that singles out vacation rentals, because that's what's been, quite frankly, that's what's led to some of the action in Tallahassee, because the legislature gets wind of that. And the next thing they'll do, they'll come up with some screwball thing that we can't regulate street parking or something. So I would caution you, whatever you do, don't make a decision and verbally make the comment you're doing it because of vacation rentals, because we just, we've all had this discussion. We don't get a lot of complaints about vacation rentals, and particularly as it relates to parking. People have concerns about. There's one that Phil mentioned to me that's down about 26th. I think I might have the wrong corner. There's a duplex, and I rode by there today. And there's like 9 cars in the driveway in the yard. They're not in violation. So, and we talked about, and that's a real hot topic in town too, because people will always park their stuff in the yard. So, I'm open to any ideas that y'all have, but if you want to make a change, you tell me what it is, and Randy and I'll draft an ordinance and do it, and then it'll be enforced. And I don't have any doubt, because I live here also, that on occasion, citation is missed, or somebody should have been cited that they weren't, but they're pretty active with citing, and particularly Mike Kelly is very active on the weekend days that he works, but do they write everybody down? So I'm open to any questions. Do you have, and one of the things, somebody had mentioned earlier about maybe having some signs up that would strongly suggest that you might not do so. So that's not going to do anything. That's like putting a sign up that says "Don't litter." You know, if you want to go down on the beach with me any morning out, we've got more trash cans on the beach than any beach in the county, and we still have litter. So whatever you do, it has to be by ordinance. It has to be. You have to put the appropriate signage up to make the public aware that you're going to cite them if they're parked in the wrong spot. Because we have routinely cited people that are parked on all the no parking areas, but this is not an easy thing to deal with. But to be quite frank with you, we don't get a lot of complaints about parking. We just don't. In the last month, at odd hours, Michelle will say, "Where are you going?" And one morning I couldn't, as you get older, I don't know if y'all experience this, sometimes you don't sleep like all night. So I woke up at 2, she said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'll be back." And go out and looked, and this is just not I'm just telling you, it's not a big issue. I will tell you that the only issue that's been brought to my attention since I've been here, and just other people have mentioned it, and there again, there's no easy way to address this, is on 4th of July, New Year's Eve, the boat parade. You know, we have people parked everywhere. And then, of course, the problem with dealing with that is if you try to write an ordinance that says, okay, on these dates, thou shalt not park wherever, there again, whose side of the street are you going to pick, and where are all these people going to park? So I just kind of want to generally lay out my thoughts. But, you know, part of my oath is to actively enforce what you adopt, but I just want you to know realistically what you're going to get into, no matter what course of action that you want to take.
Craig, how would you address several of the residents we're talking about, the IRB decal, and how would you address that, and also how would you, the comments were made that, you know, IRB residents would have those, but then it would be okay for landscaping people and this and that to be there. I mean, how can you do one or not the other? I don't understand how you...
Well, you could, I mean, technically you could adopt an ordinance and say 24 hours a day, it's IRB residents with decals, or it's 8 to 5, or it's, pick your own hours. That may be some help, but if the concern is cars parking on the street, those are still cars parking on the street. It may not be as many cars parking on the street, but it's still cars. But I would, you know, whatever, and you know, you're just talking tonight. You're not going to make a decision to change something like this in a work session. We have to bring this back. But whatever you decide to do, you know, my input to the entire commission is going to be the practicality of enforcing, you know, an idea, because that's sometimes tougher to do that than just, we'll just do this and enforce it. Because one other example I give you is that when we had the big beach meeting that Diane was involved in, that's when we, like I said, we went up and down the street, Dean and I looked at it, and we really had some problems. That's where we did double no parking on the first block, and then some of the streets were just one side. And that's, you know, really killed any complaints that we've had. We made some adjustments, but when we did that, back to making a point I was making earlier, is that when we picked one side to put the signs up, almost every street that we did that, we'd have at least one or two people that called and said, "Well, can you move them to the other side? Because you don't want them on our side." So that's what you get into when you play the one side or the other side of the street. It's just, we want it just not on my side, well, then the other person didn't want it, and then you're back. And one last thing, and I'll stop, is because I think it's important for everybody to understand this, is that unless there's a sign up on a city right-of-way that says no parking, and then we have the ability to ticket people at that point, anybody can park on the street. legally, they're not supposed to block your driveway, but there was a couple comments about, well, we don't know whose car that is. If it's not posted, you can park a car there. There's not anything that keeps you from parking a car there. There is a provision in the code, and I don't recall off the top of my head right now, that after a certain number of days, that we can sticker it. You know, we actually towed some cars. We towed more in the business district where for some reason people like to abandon cars down there.
Yes, they do.
But we can sticker it, and we have to wait so many days, and then we can tow it. But cars that sit on the street for a long period of time, that's not a real frequent occurrence either.
Does anyone have any comments, Diane, or the city manager, or any just thoughts on this issue at this time?
It's so funny because I found the old file from 2015 when we brought up parking issues, and we did a lot of the one-side parking. We put on more residents parking at the accesses, but you know, we need to continue a couple more workshops and see if there's some exact remedies we can do without saying just the parking decals. We had 20 people make comments tonight. It would be nice to get more people's view on the parking solutions or what they see as a viable solution as we go forward. I wouldn't make any recommendations now.
Joe?
It's complex, to say the least. There's not going to be an immediate cure-all. I would approach it, I think, in terms of looking at the city overall, some of the velocity end of the curve, things like that people were talking about. Maybe what we do is identify those areas and see how would we solve that particular issue if they were ranked as the highest down to the least problem. I kind of like the idea of the decal idea. And quite frankly, you know, it's selective enforcement. If we make a rule that's going to affect short-term rentals, it has to affect everybody. So one rule has to, if there's no parking at a certain place without a decal, it affects everybody. So I think it's good, like Diane said, it's going to take some additional work sessions and more input from the citizens. It's not going to be easy to solve.
Craig, do you want to, you know, for instance, take some of these ideas that were brought up tonight and just kind of investigate a few of them?
To be quite frank with you, you know, I'm glad to hear the different ideas, but those are not, none of those are new.
Right.
So I don't really have anything further to offer. I mean, the options are what the options are.
If I can, add to this discussion, part of the reason you folks have hired our firm to serve is that we do serve in communities throughout Pinellas County. I happen to be the attorney in another community that has wrestled with street and grass parking for 2 years trying to find a perfect solution. And at the last workshop, it all concluded in, why don't we just have the generic statement, it shall be allowed unless otherwise posted, or it shall be prohibited unless otherwise posted. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great, that's awesome. Because what they really realized after having studies and doing days where they brought fire trucks through 3 different zones of the neighborhood with cars parked in different arrangements and took all these pictures, what they ultimately concluded was, we have a problem on like 4 streets. So is it always best to take a sweeping approach to solving a narrow problem? I don't know that that's the case here. That's for you folks to consider. I give that as added insight that this can become a sort of meandering. I mean, it got to the point where the idea was offered of parking on even sides of the street if you have an even house number on even dates of the year. Like just every permit, things you would see in like snowplow areas and solutions like that. And the counterpoint was offered, people can't even figure out what day to water their lawn with their sprinklers. So there are a lot of permutations, and this can go a lot of ways. I'm not saying that this community is that, but I offer that as added insight. And unless we're going to conclude soon, we may need a motion soon to continue the meeting.
What is the choice? We have one more. What is the choice of the commission at this time? Do you want to kind of think about this? We'll bring it up again. Do you want, I'm just looking at, we've had people talk about there is no common sense, half common sense, one side of the street. Do don't do anything, overnight parking, there's been a discussion about that, the decals, but, even having the decals, if our citizens were parking wherever they wanted with the decals, that's still gonna have a problem at times with the emergency vehicles. So, the pavers, there was a discussion on that. It's up to the commission, where do you wanna go with this?
I would only maybe offer this suggestion to move this along, is that, because, this is a work session, so you're not taking any action. We can post and put out some additional information to the citizens about the topic of on-street parking. And this is not an emergency, it's a situation, and as Randy indicated, there's other cities that wrestle with this for a long time. Give it a month or two, and we'll put it back on the agenda. Let's just see what we hear and learn between now and then.
All right, very good. And our last bit of business here is the addition concerning the bridge, the Bel Air.
I've known for a number of weeks that the city of Bel Air Beach was having discussions, primarily been led by their mayor. It's had discussions about tourists and traffic, and, we all live here, so at peak times, the peak time we're in now, we're enjoying the pleasures of all the vehicles. But at the last Bel Air Beach City Council meeting, the mayor brought up, and I think by a vote of 4-1, I think there was one council member that didn't vote for it. They've sent a letter, or they're sending a letter to the Pinellas County Commission to ask them to consider whether or not they would entertain the idea of some type of toll on the bridge. And I don't know if this will just be a electronic, like the automatic reader toll or the person in the booth or whatever. And in my immediate reaction as the manager, as a person that lives here, is that taxpayers spent $72 million to build the Bel Air Bridge. And if you go back and read some of the history in it, they did away with the old bridge because when it was old, they needed to do it. They did away with it. They put the height up for ships and boats and that kind of thing. They did away with it just to get rid of the whole toll system. And I was at a city manager's luncheon. All the city managers get together once a month. I was up at luncheon last Friday, and the county administrator was there. And we always bring up different topics, and I brought the topic up, and his immediate response was kind of a deer in the headlights look of, where is this and who is this? And I said, yeah, you'll have a letter coming from the city of Bel Air Beach that they're going to request y'all consider placing the toll. And Bel Air Beach also wants a toll, and they also want a cut of the toll, which is interesting. But I'm just stepping out and saying that my opinion as your manager is that, and what I recommend to the commission is that, and I've already heard from a lot of people by phone primarily when this was in the V, is I would urge the commission to consider authorizing the city manager and the city attorney to draft a letter for the mayor on behalf of the whole commission that would go to the Pinellas County Commission and urge them not to do this, not to consider this. Now, Cookie told me in a conversation she had with one of the elected officials from Bel Air Beach that, there was going to be an exception for people that lived on the beaches and whatever. I can just tell you the way the toll systems work. It's not smart enough to figure out whether your car tag is the resident. And on top of that, I saw Matt here, or Matt's still here. What about the people that work at PJ's and TJ's and all our business? What about the people, every single employee, well, I'll take that back, there's two here. Almost every employee that we have that works for the city comes across the bridge area. What about employees that work for the city? So this is not a good idea. It's not a good idea for the public. And I can only imagine that if this drags along and somebody at the county level changes their mind, this could just really turn into a huge, you know what. So I would ask, that's what my recommendation to you is to authorize the city attorney and I to draft a letter that Cookie would sign on behalf of the commission, that would go to the county commission and ask them not to consider this and not to do this.
Anyone have any questions for the city manager? I did talk to one of the county staff this afternoon just on my own, and exactly about the restaurant employees and talking to them about residents, and as Greg said, you know, as he said, there's no way it could be enforced, you know, because they actually, it was brought up at the Bel Air Beach meeting that residents would have some kind of a sticker or something, and that they couldn't be monitored in that way. And the other thing that was interesting that the staff person told me was when the Treasure Island Bridge was being renovated, there was some kind of a survey taken, and that Pinellas County residents do not want more tolls. So that wasn't that long ago. I think that they made some suggestions, the county did, as far as lines and safety issues to try to do something with the traffic that could possibly help. But I told them that I was hoping that the commission would be in agreement for us to do some kind of a resolution for.
It would just be a letter.
A letter, okay, that we are not for it, our city is not for it. Is there anyone that would like to, is everyone in agreement to that, or what are your thoughts?
Yes.
Okay, so do we have to
Just
make a motion
consensus
or just
direction.
consensus? Okay, so we have a consensus that we're gonna have Greg and Randy write some kind of a letter, and that we are against the toll for our citizens of Indian Rocks Beach, and our workers too, our workers. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other business to come before this board tonight? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for coming and spending your evening with us.